It is Thursday. I'm super excited because I get to talk to you. And today I am talking to you about weddings versus elopement. Let me get this on the screen for you guys so you guys can see. All right, so I'm super excited. Like, can you tell by my face? It is also the first of the month. So hopefully that's like happy joy news to you guys, because I always look at the first day of the month as like a chance to kind of start over. It's a new month, so new aspirations, new ideas, or maybe you are actually putting out things that you kept saying I want to do, and you hadn't gotten to them because you were in that particular month. Well, now it's the first of the month, so you could start whatever it is that your heart desire to do. So as you can see on the screen today, I'm talking about weddings versus elopements and which one is actually for you. So here is the breakdown of what we're going to actually go through. So I always like to break it down because I want you to be aware of how the show is going. And of course, if you guys have any questions at all, you can ask them even while I'm live. Yes, I could see all your questions. I want to welcome some special people that I could see. Jessica Young, I could see you. So thanks for tuning in. And China as well. So just some new faces that I've seen. I know some people watch regularly, but I see some new faces. So I just wanted to shout you guys out, show you some love. All right, let's get into it. So you should be able to see right here on the screen. There we go, right there. Okay. What I'm going to talk about. So part one is going to be what's the difference between an elopement and a wedding. And then I'm going to talk about the advantages of having a wedding or an elopement. And then I'm going to jump right into making a decision as far as whether to have a wedding or an elopement. And then I'm going to talk to you about what not to do. So another thing I want to point in before I jump, because I have a lot I want to talk about, is I have stuff that's going to pop on the screen this episode. So you'll see me kind of to your left or to your right, whichever way you're viewing this right now. So don't feel like awkward that I'm to the left or to the right. I actually want you to see what's popping up on the screen. So I intentionally set up this show for that today. All right, so here we go. We're going to go into number one. What is an actual elopement? Okay, so usually elopements are more ceremony focused. They are definitely more of just the couple. Now, there are reasons why people decide to have an elopement. For example, they will feel like wedding planning is really overwhelming for them. And so they feel like, I just want to do an elopement, get it over and done with. You know, you can invite people to come to the elopement with you, but usually it really is just the couple. And that's how it's handled. And that's usually what is the focus point, is the couple. So you definitely don't want to do some of the stuff that I'm going to tell you towards the third and fourth part of this episode, okay? So don't do those things when I mention them, okay? So yeah, so elopement is, like I said, it's definitely ceremony focused. It's definitely more about the couple. And most of the time, couples decide to elope or have this elopement idea in the back of their mind if they feel overwhelmed with wedding planning. That's why if you really do want to have a wedding, you really do benefit from having a coordinator, because they can take some of that overwhelmed feeling off of your shoulders, and they're able to actually help you to get started, get rolling. Okay, so that is what an elopement is. Now I'm going to talk to you about what an actual wedding is, okay? So I know this is going to seem funny because it's like, well, what is the difference? So a wedding can be two different things. You can have an intimate wedding, or you can have a very large wedding, which means if you're going large, you probably have more than 100 guests, sometimes 150. I've done weddings with a lot of guests. So if you're having a wedding, like that's a large wedding. If it's anything over 100 people, I'd say, or like 100 or 150, you're definitely having a large wedding. But you want to decide like why you're having that wedding, because for the most part, weddings are really for you to bring your family and friends and all those good people that you want to invite to be a part of this moment with you, right? Yes, it's about the couple. Yes, it's about your celebration. Yes, it's about your union. All of that too. But for the most part, it's like a special overdone in a good way party. Look at it that way. Whereas an elopement is just the two of you and you're like, it's just us. We want to do this. And I also think that there tends to be this negative connotation that is associated with elopements, because when you hear like, oh, so-and-so eloped, right? You're like, oh, they ran away to Vegas and they didn't invite anybody. Like, elopements aren't that anymore. Like, if you've seen some of the elopement wedding photography and wedding videography, it's phenomenal. I'm talking about people really going, as far as the outfits and location, decor, all that jazz. So I'm going to get into that too. But elopements are no longer, oh, we just wanted to get married and we didn't want to go through the whole rigmarole of having like a whole bunch of people there and inviting people and all that stuff. So that's why I wanted to also hone in on the definition and like the difference, because elopements are definitely no longer this like, oh, you decided to just run off to Vegas and be like defiant kind of thing. All right. So I'm going to get into the next thing for you. And if you're just catching on to the show, I am talking about the difference between an elopement and a wedding. So I just went over like specifically what the differences are, usually what people will count as a wedding or an elopement. All right. So now I'm going to talk to you about the advantages of having a wedding versus elopement. And again, because I have so much information, I wanted to simplify it. So I actually wrote some of this stuff down so that I could be like specific, and I also wanted to do a comparison. So if you're listening and you have pen and paper, you can write it down, or you could just save this video for your wedding planning or catch the replay, whatever you want to do. I'm going to talk to you about the advantages of having an elopement and the advantages of actually having a wedding. And if you guys haven't noticed, Phoenix has officially tuned into the show. She realized that we're live. You guys have seen her before, so we're just going to ignore her because she doesn't really know what's going on right now, other than people can see her acting a fool. So sliding right into the next topic, which is the advantages of an elopement or a wedding. Okay, so I'm going to start with elopements first. So usually with an elopement, the schedule is a little bit more fluid. You have way more leisure time because you're not on like a specific schedule, where with weddings, you usually have to follow a specific timeline, right? So, and it's usually based on how many hours you have booked for your venue, for your vendors, all of that comes into play. Whereas an elopement is usually like ceremony is over and done, and you probably have way more time for just having fun with what you wanted to do, or taking more photos, like whatever became priority for you. That's one of the advantages of having an actual elopement. Okay, so I went over the schedule is more fluid. You have more leisure time. The next would be you have more intimate time to actually take photos. So if that's a big deal for you, like if you're like, I really like, I want to be married to the love of my life, great, and all that jazz, but I really want these photos to be on and popping, right? If photos is really important to you, then an elopement might be better too, because you have that leisure time that you don't have to say, oh, you have 30 minutes for couple portraits. And yes, that kind of stuff does happen with weddings. So just something to think about. Also, if you wanted to do like a boudoir session, an elopement is really good for that too, because it's just you usually getting ready. Like, yeah, you can have a makeup artist. Yeah, you can have somebody doing your hair, but it's really just you. So it's easier for you to do like that kind of session and still make the most of your time. So if you wanted to do a boudoir session like on your wedding day, but don't cancel out a big wedding, because experienced photographers actually can do a boudoir session for you at your wedding too. So that's why I said I wanted to do like comparison, like topic to topic, but I'm doing elopements first if you're just catching on. All right. So that's a good reason. For elopements, decor is definitely way more smaller. I said smaller. It's smaller. You don't have like a huge venue and all this other stuff to decorate, right? And so you don't have to have as much decor. So if that's an issue for you, or if that's a concern for you, an elopement may also be better for you. Either way, I shoot weddings and elopements, so we're gonna make it look good, period, right? Another thing that I think couples kind of feel like, well, what do we do as far as this topic is concerned, and that's why I have it on the list, is food. So just because you have an elopement does not mean that you can't have a special meal. As a matter of fact, you can actually make it a little bit more personalized by hiring a chef. Maybe it's a caterer that you like who's also a chef. They should be or could be. And now you can actually like hire them to come into your home and maybe cook like a personal meal that way. You can do like a really nice dinner or something like that after the actual elopement happens. You can also go to an upscale restaurant, and just because the money that you would probably spend on catering for like 150 plus guests, it would just be the two of you spending that money at an upscale restaurant that you probably wouldn't regularly go to. So you don't have to, just because you have an elopement doesn't mean like, oh, I can't have all the glam as far as like having a caterer and all that jazz too. Okay. So, that's another like way to think about the food aspect, that you don't have to sacrifice, that part, right? What else I have down? If you guys are looking for like a local chef in Orlando, I would definitely check out Corwin, with Corwin Catering. He's really good. Like, his food's amazing. I know a lot of different caterers, honestly. It's a week. Okay. It looks like we had a little glitch, in the streaming. Let me just make sure. I think we're back on. Can you guys see me? I think we're good. Let me see. Okay, so it looks like we're still on. Okay. I got an alert, so I'm like, oh no, I just got into it. Let me just check one more thing. Okay, it looks like we're still streaming. If you're watching this live, can you just do me a quick favor? I rarely ask for this. Can you drop a comment or a heart just letting me know I can hear you, because I just got an alert saying that the stream was interrupted, and I don't want to keep talking if you guys can't hear me. I'd rather start over. So if you guys could just let me know in a comment, that would help me to make sure that we're still good to go. But it looks like we're good. Okay, thank you, Jessica. See, hearts for you, Jessica. I don't know if it's coming through, but thank you so much. Okay, so let's keep going. I already talked about the photography. Oh, and then one of the bigger things that I think is a plus, but again, if you have an experienced wedding photographer and videographer, this really doesn't matter either, is that your location is more flexible with an elopement. So especially if you're taking pictures and you want to have you want to go to the mountains or something different, it's easy for you to do that and not have to worry about so much money being spent because it's just the two of you, your photographer or whatever. So those are advantages of an elopement. Now I'm going to switch over to the advantages of a wedding. Okay. Let me switch this really quick and pull this off. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to talk about the advantages of a wedding. You guys should be able to see that. It looks like it's coming through. Okay, yep. Broadcast is good. All right, we're good. Okay, so here are the advantages of a wedding. So you don't have the flexibility of not following that particular timeline. So if you don't mind following a schedule, definitely go ahead and have a wedding, because I'm telling you, a really experienced and great planner is going to keep you on that schedule, because they want to make sure that you get the most of your time at your particular venue or location. Same thing with the photographer or videographer. They will ask to see that timeline to make sure that what you've booked them for actually is, works, that you have the actual coverage. Okay. So if you don't mind following a schedule, then a wedding is good for you. What the next thing, and that's why I said I wrote this down, because I wanted to make sure I'm comparing them so you guys could really hear the differences or not. The tailoring and following of the timeline for the day, whereas with an elopement, you have more leisure time. Okay. So number 3 is, more personalized decor is at a wedding. So you'll notice like you'll have more table settings, you have place cards, you have your guest names, all of that stuff. It's more personalized. Whereas an elopement, you may be eloping at a church or a local courthouse. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't let you put up decor, but I promise you it's going to be very limited in what you can show, because it's just the type of setting that you're at and that you've chosen to have your elopement at. So that's something to consider. But again, like let's say you did something like a mountain or something, or park, then your canvas is kind of blank there too, where you can have more decor for an elopement. So it's only limited to the thought that you put and attach to it, is what I'm trying to get at. At a wedding, you're definitely going to have larger guest counts. But again, at an elopement, you can have a minimum of like 10 people. I say anything over like 25 and really pushing it 50, you have an actual wedding. So it may be an intimate or smaller wedding, but if you have like 10 people, like anywhere from like 10 to 15, you still probably would be more of an elopement. Again, that's something you want to ask your photographer. But I'm going to get into 3 and 4 of this, what you really want to know. Okay. And the next, with a wedding, you definitely have more vendors. So your makeup artist, your hairstylist, your photo, your caterer, your floral, decor, venue, all that stuff. Notice how I'm not mentioning specific things, right? I'm not talking about the dress. I'm not talking about the suit, because you can still kill it in your outfit if you have an elopement. Like I said, if you've seen some of these elopement photos, like it is not a matter of like, oh, I just have this little cheesy dress. Like, no, like you can have a full out gown if you want to with an elopement. It's your canvas. It's all about what you want to do. Okay. And so those are things that you really have to pay attention to. So that's why I wanted to focus on the advantages of both, so that you can hear where there are similarities and where there are differences, to determine like, either which one you want to do, or to determine like which one is better for you. All right. And I went over those 2 things. So I'm going to jump next into making an actual decision. Okay. So the first tip I want to give you is, drop my pen, whatever. The first thing I want to give you is, whatever you choose to do, whether it's an elopement or a wedding, you need to be content. It is about you and your significant other and this union. Like, don't let a lot of outside people influence that decision. Unless like you're in a real dire situation where maybe like your parents are paying for your wedding and they just really don't have the finances like that for an actual wedding. And let me just warn my mother and father, if they're watching, I'm having a wedding, so save up. Okay, moving on. No, but if your parents are paying and maybe they really don't have it and they're just like, look, can you do an elopement? You can definitely do an elopement, or scale down on something if you want an actual wedding. So for instance, you don't have that mansion venue or that really, really big venue. You choose a smaller venue, so it's less money. And that's where it goes into number 2, what I'm about to give you as far as making a decision, is you have to think about your budget. Your budget also can help you determine whether an elopement is better for you or whether a wedding is an option for you. And I'm saying both because most people choose to elope a lot of times because of planning overwhelm or budget. Like those tend to be the 2 things. There is this saying that like some people like in the military or stuff like that they tend to elope because the timeliness of it. That's really personal experience. I don't feel like, because I know tons of people who are not in the military that elope. I just did an elopement yesterday. So I don't think that that's like completely the main reason why, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the last one, which is booking your wedding vendors or your elopement vendors, and this one is key. So let me switch this over really quick for you guys. Okay, this is what not to do. Okay, listen closely. Do not. And listen closely, okay? Do not contact a vendor, whatever they do. Photo, video, floral, calligraphy, car service, all that would have to service you on your day. And again, notice I'm not talking about dresses, suit rental, all that jazz. But I think it can apply there too. But I'm specifically talking about like photography, video. If you're gonna get a limo, all that kind of stuff that is day of service, catering, floral. Do not tell them that you're getting eloped, like you're planning an elopement, and you know without a shadow of a doubt that you are having a wedding. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not even so much that it's misleading, but what is going to be offered to you as far as services and availability is going to be completely different if you're eloping, but you're really having a wedding. And you're going to be disappointed in what you actually experience with that person because, for example, even though I approach both, with quality, I'm always going to deliver a good experience and quality. That's what I focus on, right? But I am going to approach an elopement with time, which is a key factor, completely different than I will a wedding. Completely different. I know for most wedding days, like I have about 30 minutes to actually do couples portraits, and the pictures that you see on, on my website or on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, like those are not from like style shoots or whatever. And I have nothing against style shoots. I'm just saying I know sometimes people ask those questions. Those are from real weddings. And sometimes you only have about like 30 minutes to actually do the couple's portraits. Whereas when an elopement, there is more time. You more than likely will not do a first look because it's an elopement and you're just getting right into the ceremony. There's not a lot of that pre-stuff and all these time blocks that you have to follow. So I'm telling you, just from as a professional, with all respect, do not contact any vendor, and tell them I'm having an elopement, but you know darn well you're having a wedding. Or even if you're having a vow renewal, don't contact the vendor and say I'm having a vow renewal. I'm having an elopement and it's a vow renewal, because I feel like vow renewals, depending on how you're planning them, can almost be equivalent to a wedding or like very much in between a wedding and an elopement. So just be honest with your vendor. Like, you never know. You might contact a vendor who needs more elopements, and so they might give you, not a discount, but like a special package or a special collection, but you didn't tell them the truth as far as like this is really an elopement or really a wedding. So I know I'm going back and forth, but I'm doing that intentionally because people do this. Like, they'll contact vendors and they'll say, oh, I'm having a vow renewal, and it's a full-blown wedding. You ain't never been married before. So it's a lie. And then you're not happy with how the vendor may have approached, or you may have underbooked them as far as hours, quantity, need, all of that jazz. So just be honest. Like, I hear this question a lot, and it has to do with booking too. Like, don't be afraid of like the vendor beating you in the head for price. Like, don't approach it like that. The more honest you are, actually, the more it's easier for a vendor to actually give you more tailored to what you want. But if you're trying to beat them in the head by being dishonest, you're going to get the same thing. So don't contact a vendor. Like, if you're submitting through like Wedding Wire or the Knot or their website, Facebook, whatever, all Instagram, all that jazz, how you can actually reach them. Don't contact them and lie about what you're actually having. Don't say, oh, it's just a small party and it's an elopement. Don't say, oh, it's just an elopement and it's a wedding. Don't say, oh, it's a vow renewal and it's a real wedding. Like, if let it be what it is, and connect with your vendor that way. So I had to put that out there because I know people do that, and it's just not a benefit for either party, the vendor that you're trying to hire or or yourself. Okay, and then last but not least, don't skip out on having photo or video just because you're having an elopement. Okay, obviously people do that for weddings, so I honestly say don't skip for both, but elopements tend to be the ones that get skipped as far as not having a photographer or videographer. And again, what's offered is going to be different because, for instance, if you have an elopement, right, meaning your elopement itself is only an hour, then you're not going to have the photographer offer you something. You're not going to have the photographer offer you something for 8 hours because you don't need 8 hours coverage, right? But if you're actually having a wedding, listen to what I'm saying. You're having a wedding and you're telling the photographer it's an elopement, they're going to offer you a minimum, and you don't want a minimum for your day. You want the best that you can get, right, for your day. You want the best quality and the best experience. So if you decide to have an elopement, don't skip out on getting a photographer or videographer. It's still special, and especially if it's just the two of you and you guys have not invited any other guests that, you know, can take pictures on their cell phone or whatever, if that's what you desire, you won't have any memories of this elopement. So definitely hire a photographer or videographer if you are having an elopement, because it's probably the most that you would spend on an elopement, and maybe outside of your dress and if you're traveling to like a really, really, really nice location. But outside of that, like, that's probably the most you would spend on something that is definitely worth capturing. And of course, if you're having a wedding, definitely have wedding photography, but I would tell you, don't skimp out on video. Even if you get a highlight video, which is, you know, they can range from like 3 to 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. And I know people say, well, that seems short. It's really not for a highlight. You need to look at the shooting style of the particular vendor. You know, do they shoot a lot of details? Do you get audio in it? You'd be surprised, some of these beautiful highlights that are 5 to 7 minutes. And then you have these long behind the wedding films that are like, that was way too long for no reason. And I know people, you think, when you think 5 to 7 minutes, you're thinking of something else that you've watched for 5 to 7 minutes. It's completely different when you're shooting a wedding. There's just so much detail, so much going on. And if they're experienced, they know what they're doing. Also look at their style, look at their other videos, and that will give you an idea of what their actual highlights actually look like. All right. So I'm going to take a breather because I'm so glad I got through all that. I really wanted to make sure that you guys got all this information. So again, if you are in the position where you're like, man, I don't know what to do, I don't know whether to have an elopement or a wedding, watch this video again, watch it as many times as you need to. If you have any questions about it that I may not have addressed in this video, definitely leave a comment. I do respond, I reply back. If you follow me on Instagram and you DM me on there or have a question on there, I answer there. I'm here to help, in addition to being an amazing photographer and videographer. Thank you. But I'm so glad that you tuned in. I'm Anisha Collins, award-winning wedding photographer and cinematographer, currently based in Orlando, Florida. I'm the owner and operator of Unashamed Imaging, and if you are deciding whether or not to have a wedding or elopement, watch this video. See you in the next episode. I do this twice a month on Thursdays. Bye.